Hello, I'm Kevin Benedict, Senior Vice President of Solution Strategy here at Regalix, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today in this Digital Expert Interview Series. And I'm so happy to have today Robyn Matlock from VMware. She's the Chief Marketing Officer. Robyn.
Thank you.
Thank you for thank you for joining us. So I want, we on this series we talk all about digital transformation in all different aspects. A lot of what we do is talk about back-end things like logistics and manufacturing and supply chains and how everything's being impacted by digital transformation. But we reserved this segment here to talk about digital transformation in the marketing space. So nobody better to talk to than Robyn.
All right, well, it's a topic I love. It's near and dear to my heart.
So we talk about digital transformation, and you guys at VMware talk all about things like digital workspace, mobile cloud, all these cool emerging technology areas. Let's set some context for what we talk about and what follows. So digital workspace, what does that mean to us?
Well, I think digital workspace is a reflection of the transformation that's happening, largely driven by mobility and cloud and consumer pressures. I mean, at the end of the day, we get consumers, not as our corporate customers, we get access to the apps we want in seconds, right? But when we come into the corporate world, that experience is very, very different. And IT has struggled to give us that consumer-like experience. So I think digital workspace is about untethering me from my desktop so that I'm not anchored to my office or a location, that really my apps and my data can follow me anywhere, anytime, and that I can consume and get access to those apps and data in the form factor that's appropriate for me, which one day may be an iPad, one moment might be an iPhone, heaven forbid a BlackBerry.
Yes. So we're all familiar and we're all accustomed to that treatment within the consumer space. So within the enterprise space, what are the assets that people need to gain access to and take with them when they go to work remotely?
The challenge in the enterprise space is, of course, the application landscape is more complicated. You still have mainframe apps. You have apps that are Unix-based apps. You have legacy apps. You have modern apps. You have mobile apps. And for IT to keep pace and giving the user access to these apps that were very hardwired into hardware has been very difficult.
Right.
Now the other thing is, as soon as I start giving you access to everything on all these different surface areas, your iPad, your iPhone, any device of choice, my security exposure just went up exponentially. All of a sudden now, my surface area for threat and vulnerability is exponentially larger. That's been a real problem for IT to keep pace with, and their behavior in the past has been control.
Right.
Now what we're seeing is giving them technologies and giving them the ability to maintain the control and governance that IT needs to be accountable to the business, but the freedom that the consumer needs to be able to access and do their job in the way most appropriate for them.
Wow, absolutely. So that, just thinking through that process, we all expect to get all our information, have all our apps, have access to everything anywhere we're at. That same mentality follows us when we're shopping. And when we're in the B2B space too. So how do you, as Chief Marketing Officer of VMware, address the need for being able to follow a customer journey that's going to be everywhere and on all these different devices?
Sure, so that's kind of switching gear and thinking about me as a marketer, right? As opposed to my VMware business hat.
Right.
As a marketer, what I worry about is how do I gain access to my customers at the right time and present to them the information that's most relevant to them based on where they are at that moment.
Right.
And I think this is different than our old approach because we weren't as sophisticated, frankly. We didn't have our pulse on our customers' journey and really understanding where are they in their learning cycle. And now with, frankly, compliments to all the digital capabilities that we have, we can be much more intelligent. And the benefit is then I can serve that customer better. It's all in the service of the customer. How do I give them what they want? I don't want them hunting and pecking, trying to find, but it's hard to find because it's not designed for them. I want to design it for them, purpose-built, in real time, automated.
Absolutely. So in some circles, they call that customer experience management. So the whole process, there's an experience that you can provide based on what you think they already know. And all of that, the underpinning, kind of the currency or the oil that runs all of that, is data. So how, over the last 3 to 5 years, how has this proliferation of data changed how we as marketers can operate?
Right. I mean, it's radical differences 3-4 years ago. I think a couple of things. First of all, just to define data, because I think data is just that's a whole hour conversation in and of itself. I think what's different about today in the data that we deal with, it's not just owned data. Now, as I try to understand my customer better, I'm piecing together signals from the industry that are coming from channels that I don't own. You know, I've got a lot of input coming in about what is my customer, where are they in their journey. So data sources are very fragmented, and they come at us through a variety of different channels, and there's a whole art to how we pull that together to get a single pane of glass into who is our customer and where are they on their journey. So that's kind of one thing. The second thing is then how do you take action on that, and how do you do that in an automated fashion? How do you get really smart about, we call it the customer lifecycle journey, you know, where they are. And I think that the difference about today is it's a lot about data scientists. You know, I wouldn't say in the old marketing mix you had a whole bunch of scientists in the marketing department. Nowadays, you have scientists in the marketing department, and that's new for us.
Oh, absolutely. Because if I think through this process, with all the data, that gives us insight into how our own products are being used. You know, is a customer actually using the 6 products they bought from us, or are they only using 3 of them? And how much are they using it? What kind of context are they using it? And who's using it? And I guess that data can actually help us market to markets of one, the individual user, the user that has ownership of the particular product. So are marketers able to actually tie that information back into action? Or is it more, or is it still in a theory?
No, I think we are definitely able to tie it into action. I think where our maturity is still scaling is what level of granularity can we get to? How far down the long tail can we go? And I think there's still a lot of automation required. And, you know, I think AI and machine learning will have to play a bigger and bigger role. In my world of enterprise marketing, where the buying cycle is very complex, it's not like a consumer world where it's one consumer, one call to action, one transaction. It's very complicated. I think we have a ways to go to automate that at scale. But without a doubt, we are, 1, mapping out our customer journeys, 2, understanding what is the experience the customer needs at these phases of the journey. It's not one size fits all. How do we look at our value and deliver that in a context that's more relevant to how they consume it? And then 4, how do we tailor that and be more personalized and specific to their particular needs?
Well, absolutely. I think I can look back on my own career when every time a product changed, there was new manuals, there was webinars, there were training and retraining kinds of sessions. Today, our products can change 10 times a month because they're cloud.
Even in the enterprise world, yep, absolutely.
They're on a cloud, and we don't even see that. How do we, in general, in technology, communicate those changes and our features and benefits and new ways of doing things to complex channels? That must be a huge challenge.
It is a challenge, frankly, and all of us are so inundated with communications. You know, the bottom line is we're reading a small percentage of the total communications that are blasted at us. It is complicated. I think the secret is that you have to chunk out your information into a variety of form factors, size of message. I think TED Talks is trying to transform the speaking platform, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to give a talk more than 20 minutes anymore, right? Because that's twice as long as our attention span is as it is. Video format, you really have to think about how you kind of very succinctly land your message, and more bite-sized, small, kind of, you know, nimble messages to the market. I also think you need to look at your channels and think about very appropriate messages per channel. You need to segment your audiences. Don't take your business message to your technical buyer. Make sure that your vertical message is landing on the right vertical and get really tailored. That's why it's going to be consumed. That way it'll be consumed easier.
Absolutely. And it occurs to me that as we transform, as our products all become digital and transform as well, that our existing sales methods might change. Our channels might change. Somebody that was a great partner in the analog era perhaps isn't transforming their own operation quick enough. So I can see there's even, our channels change, our partners change, our customers change, everything, and so our marketing has to change for all that.
Absolutely. Well, the interesting thing about the customer relationship, and I think this is well documented, we know that the buying journey is going longer and longer without engagement directly with a salesperson, right?
My next question is...
Well, there's so much information available to customers that they can do a lot of their research without actually engaging you. So one, I think as marketers, we need to make sure that as they're out there scouring and looking for information, that one, we're visible, we're available, that we're accurate, that our brand is well represented, that it's not misrepresented out there, that others are telling our story. We need other customers to be out there evangelizing on our behalf, or thought leaders or experts. So we kind of have to cover all those bases, and that's before they even talk to our great sales team, right?
So if there's 10 steps in the customer journey, they might have done 7 before you even become aware of them.
That's right. That's right.
So does that mean they're better educated by the time they get to you?
Sure, I think they are, but sometimes they're better educated, sometimes we might argue that they're misinformed, right? That's part of the randomness of that, is that you don't get to control all avenues for them to seek knowledge and information, but you do definitely have to be very aware of what are their primary channels and what are the right influence, kind of levers to pull to have the broadest reach and the most credibility. As you get into the social channels, for example, the old marketing techniques don't work. You can't go out with a bunch of, me
Right.
type of communication awareness. You can use your customer voice, though. You can definitely amplify your customer success and get them to, be an advocate on your behalf. So you really have to adapt, but I think you really need to think about covering all your bases, because you're right, the buying journey's 70% done before you show up.
Oh yeah. So and one of those channels is going to social and looking at influencers. How does VMware use kind of their influencer network, if you would?
VMware's been working with a community of influencers for years, and actually very, very effectively. And we have a great relationship with our community. It's probably one of the largest in tech, at least one of the top 5. We have technical experts that are all part of our community, and what we do is, one, we try to help them be successful. And at the end of the day, if we can feed them information that's valuable to them, that makes their brand stronger, makes them more informed, we look at that as our job. At the end of the day, they own their channels, they own their audiences, and our job is to build a relationship with them and to give them any insight and information that we have at our disposal and make it available to them. And then they pick and choose, and they amplify what makes sense for them and their audience.
Whatever kind of social platforms that they share information on.
Or their followers, what's relevant to their followers. But what we do is keep them together as a community, and we help them network with each other, have access to us, our experts. So we make ourselves very available to them as just essentially a really valuable resource.
That's one of those things that a couple decades ago, you never would have seen that.
I think
no one person would have much of a voice.
And it'd be a one-way push.
Yes.
Right? It'd be a one-way. This is more about a dialogue and a conversation and a relationship.
Oh, wow. So in addition to influencer programs that have become so powerful and the social media platforms that support those, other emerging technologies that impact marketing, automation, things like chatbots, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all this kind of stuff. How do you see those different kind of hyped emerging technologies impacting what you guys do?
Well, I think one of the challenges we're dealing with right now in the industry is that there are little best-in-class solutions for every small little piece of the MarTech stack. And as a CMO, I can tell you it starts to become a little overwhelming. You can only kind of layer in so many point solutions before you feel like nothing's working tightly together as much as it should or could, and you got to be careful you don't build a bunch of little silos. I also think you have to be careful that you don't keep using point products to solve integration issues. I'll just throw another SaaS offering on top of this. Where we see the opportunity is really driving these things together as a platform. And I think we're looking at our investment choices to go, who's doing the best job driving integration across an ecosystem? So we're not in there trying to glue and stitch together, 50, 60, 70 different individual piece parts of this technology. I think the same thing is true on the data side. That can be a very complicated world where you have different data sets. And do you really have a fabric that pulls it all together? Because all of this automation, all of this digital intelligence, it has to be built on a foundation of a really strong data fabric, which is complicated.
No, absolutely. And I was reading today a blog by a futurist, Frank Diana, that I follow, and he was writing about experiences, and he said our experiences in the consumer space influence all other experiences we have. So things that were very satisfactory to us in the past now become obnoxious and irritating because they don't have the same ease as other experiences. So none of us work in a vacuum. We're being influenced by all these kind of easy environments. So if what we expect is every part of our customer journey is going to have a beautiful experience, how do we, with large amounts of products, large complex channels, how do we have oversight over a customer experience from end to end? How's that done?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to say it's easy. And I'm going to use a very fluffy term to put a label on it. That's called brand.
Okay. Talk to me about that.
That's brand. Well, the reality is every time somebody engages with your company, your products, your services, your telephone system, your collateral, your website, your people, they are experiencing your brand. And as marketers, one of our biggest jobs and biggest responsibility is how do we create a connected experience? And that means that whether you're talking to my sales rep or you're on my site or you went to my event or you met with my partner, when you hear VMware, you know what that means. You know what that stands for. You have an expectation, and that expectation is equal to your experience, and those are both equal to my aspiration.
Absolutely, understood.
So I think marketers own that. I think we own that, and I think it is challenging because you have many tentacles to how your brand gets out to the market and to your customers, and it's very difficult to control every aspect.
In many of the largest enterprises and companies that I have worked with, we have different field sales groups or field marketing groups that do things differently and have their own favorite vendors and solutions and everything else. And having an oversight when somebody now expects to have a similar and familiar and beautiful experience across all that, certainly has always been one of my biggest challenges when I've been out there.
It is, and we know that the greatest companies do this really well. And I'm sure we could drop a few brands of just iconic companies that at the end of the day had a very strong sense of self. And I think brand, purpose, values, really mission and vision, and when those are really strong in a company, then I think it's a little easier to rally all the different kind of troops that have to play a part in delivering that to the marketplace.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So we've talked about kind of VMware's approach. We've talked about, in general, the challenges of marketers. Now I'm going to focus on you, Robyn.
Oh, yippee.
Yes, two things in particular. One, as a busy executive, how do you stay on top of all the information that's really necessary for us to do our jobs? There's new books, magazines, articles, there's problems, there's threats, there's risk, competitive. How do we do that?
Well, you know what? I don't know that I really feel like I ever am totally on top of it, because it is literally an unlimited amount of information. So to me, it's a lot about prioritizing, being very grounded on kind of what are the key areas that I need to stay really personally very in touch with. The other thing is use my network, use my teams, use my peer group. How do I make sure I surround myself by experts? Because I'm not an expert in everything, far from it. So that's really important to me. That's been a kind of a key success factor for me. I think the other thing is you do just need to be open-minded and kind of a growth mindset and learn and feel like you always are learning. This industry, boy, you can never feel like you actually master anything,
If you think back to, the, what was it, Mad Men days, right, where you just thought you knew what you were doing.
You just had to order a scotch and smoke a cigarette really elegantly.
And all you have to do, if you say it loud and with confidence, that was the rules.
That's right.
That's how things work. It's not like that anymore.
Especially for the guys.
Yes, well, true enough. So the last question, I'm going to ask you to put on your futurist hat.
Okay.
How do you think the role of a chief marketing officer is going to change over the next 5 years?
Well, I think we're already on the trend of this change, but I think we've hit it already earlier in the conversation. It is going to be data, and it is going to be analytics, and it is going to be the science side of marketing. Now, in my world, in the enterprise world, we are never going to lose the relationship, because at the end of the day, when you're through all that, there are two humans that look each other in the eye, shake hands, and say, I want to do business with you. And I don't want to undermine that, because I think that's a really vital part of the long-term relationship. But in order to get there, in order to be one of the brands that wins and is at that seat at that point in time, it is going to just take incredibly intense rigor on technology, process, data, analytics, automation.
Wow.
And I think those are really kind of the new rock star elements of marketing.
And most of that's going to happen in the cloud.
Yes, it definitely, I don't think it's only in the cloud, but for sure the cloud is enabling us to innovate faster. And I think on the customer data side, we start, that's going to be some industries are going to be all in with their customer data in the cloud, and some are going to be more protective. I think we're going to find industries at varying senses of kind of adoption. I think we're going to see hybrid environments where I'm going to get certain services from the cloud, but I'm going to need to have something still kind of in the protection of my own IT and governance and firewall. So I think we're going to be in a hybrid world for some time.
And we're in the middle of this tornado of complexity and data and fast changing and emerging technologies. Who would have thought?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of the VMware folks would have thought, right? we bet our business on technology really driving incredible business transformations. So.
That's great. So I want to thank Robyn Matlock for joining us today, sharing her insight, her experiences on the market and her own experiences. And I want to thank you guys out there for sticking with us, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for staying with us.
Bye-bye. Thank you.